This video is sponsored by World of Warships. If you're on a ship that happens to sink, have you ever wondered what equipment or supplies you would have? Nowadays, ships always carry enough survival craft for everyone on board. Whether it's a partially enclosed lifeboat on a cruise ship or a free-fall, fire-protected lifeboat on a chemical tanker, the equipment you will find inside is broadly the same. It's actually written down in international law in a publication called the International Life-Saving Appliance Code, or LSA code for short. The code tells us about all sorts of life-saving equipment like life jackets, lifebuoys, immersion suits, flares, and the bit we're interested in, survival craft. It tells us, for example, that lifeboats must be able to travel fully loaded at 6 knots for 24 hours, or 2 knots when towing a fully loaded 25-person life raft. In case the engines break, they need to have sufficient oars to make headway in calm seas. Saying that, free-fall lifeboats, like you find on a bulk carrier, don't need to have oars. That makes sense because they would cause serious damage during the launch. Anyway, let's look at launching a partially enclosed lifeboat so we can see all the equipment that you would have. One of the first things you will find, often before even leaving the ship, are anti-seasickness tablets. The lifeboat will have enough to give everyone 48 hours worth. It's absolutely critical to take them for the simple reason that it reduces loss of fluids. Even if you don't usually get seasick, you should still take yours because it only takes one person in a hot smelly boat and you'd trigger a chain reaction. Anyway, when it's time to launch, the next thing you will use is the painter. You'll actually be provided with 2 painters. In the stowed position on a ship, a painter will be permanently attached to the forward end of the lifeboat. The idea is that should the lifeboat need to launch when the ship has headway, the painter will keep it pointing forwards so that it doesn't capsize. You'll likely need to release that painter to get away, hence the spare. It gives you a line that can be used for anything like towing life rafts, for example. So, now you've got away and your attention turns to preparing the boat for survival. If you know land is in one direction, you can use the illuminated compass that's provided to make your way there. Otherwise, it's best to stay close to where your ship sank because that's the most likely place for rescuers to start searching. On the topic of sinking ships, let me talk to you about this video's sponsor, World of Warships. World of Warships is a free team-based sea combat game available for PC. Take command of over 400 realistically modelled historical ships and navigate through the game's unique living landscapes featuring stunning graphics. I love these ocean textures and changing weather systems. Join more than 44 million players on 4 different types of warship. Maybe you'd like to play on your own, taking advantage of your ship's strengths, the speed and manoeuvrability of destroyers, the pure strength and power of battleships, cruisers which are capable of a variety of tactics, or even mighty aircraft carriers, the true masters of reconnaissance and devastating airstrikes. You can even team up with friends in Division and dominate the seas as a fleet. The first step in your career is to download World of Warships using the link in the description below. If you're new to the game, get a head start using the code BOOM during registration and enjoy a huge starter pack including 200 doubloons, the cruiser St. Louis and the premium cruiser Emden, 20 Restless Fire camouflage, 2.5 million credits and 7 days of premium account. Blow your enemies out the water, leaving them in their lifeboat. They'll stay close to where their ship sinks and probably deploy the sea anchor. A sea anchor is like a large cloth bucket that's designed to stream ahead of the lifeboat. When there's any wind, the boat will tend to get blown along. Adding the resistance from a sea anchor to the forward end will keep your bow pointing into the weather. It makes the boat more comfortable and slows your rate of drift away from the ship's position. In case the sea anchor breaks, you could improvise with some of your other equipment. You have a buoyant baler and 2 buckets. Obviously these are provided primarily for getting water out of the boat, but you can always tie a bucket to the end of the spare painter and you've got an improvised sea anchor. Once you're settled in the lifeboat, held in position with the sea anchor, the hope is that rescue will come quickly. You want to draw as much attention to your boat as you can. It's likely that rescuers are using radar, so you want to do all you can to show up. You have a radar reflector, so get that hoisted as high as you can. It uses the cat's eye effect to return electromagnetic pulses back to their sender, painting a clearer image on their radar screen. The higher you get it, the better. Strap it to the end of an oar or use one of the 2 boat hooks, also part of your required kit, to get it even higher in the air. Of course, if you have a SART, use that instead of the reflector. Never use both at the same time though, in case the reflector blocks your own SART transmission. As rescuers get closer, you have a whole host of equipment to choose from to get their attention. There are 4 rocket flares which can be seen a long way off and 6 hand flares for shorter range, particularly at night. During the day there are 2 smoke floats that can be a brilliant indicator for aircraft as they just billow out orange coloured smoke. If it's daytime, why not use the sun as well? You have a signalling mirror which you can use to get the attention of passing ships. Of course, once you've been seen, don't keep dazzling them as they won't be able to help you if they can't see. In a way, it is easier at night though because lights show up so clearly against a dark sky. You have a searchlight which is incredibly bright, or you even have a torch and spare bulbs and batteries if you fancy communicating with a bit of Morse code. There's always the old classic, a whistle as well, though most of the lifeboats I've seen throw in an air horn too. It's not as silly as it sounds. In restricted visibility, sound is your best way of attracting attention. So ideally you'll be rescued quite quickly, near to where your ship sank, but what if rescue doesn't come? What else does the lifeboat have to help you survive? The basics like food and water of course. There are 3 litres of water per person, possibly also rainwater collectors or solar stills to increase the supply. To measure it out, there's a rust-proof graduated drinking vessel, and to make sure you can get it out the tanks and containers, a rust-proof dipper with a lanyard. For food you have 10,000 kilojoules per person, often in the form of high-energy biscuits. I actually bought a pack to make this video and they taste a little like shortbread. You don't actually need much food to survive, but if you find you have to climb a ladder or something onto a rescue ship, it's good to take on a burst of energy beforehand. Every lifeboat also has a set of fishing tackle, though it's actually there for morale reasons rather than for food. It gives you something to do. Eating raw fish would dehydrate you, so you wouldn't actually consider that unless you'd established a plentiful supply of water already. Of course, you can always increase food and water supplies by taking more with you when you abandon ship. This has been thought of as well, which is why you have 3 tin openers on the lifeboat. The last thing you'd want is to have some tin fruit and be unable to open it. The final bits of equipment all deal with different emergencies that you might have on board. Needing to rescue people from the water is a distinct possibility. You have 2 rescue quoits with 30 metres of buoyant line. You can throw them towards anyone in the water, then pull them back on board. If they're cold, you can wrap them in a thermal protective aid. Every boat has at least 2, though boats designed for more than 20 people will have extras so that 10% of occupants could have one. If they or anyone else is injured, there's a first aid kit. For fires, you have an extinguisher that can cope with Class B or oil fires. Should it really take hold, there are 2 axes stored, one at each end, so that you could break out of the boat if needed. It's more likely that you would use the axe to chop things like a stubborn painter or break up driftwood or something. For smaller ropes, fabrics, food and things, you've got a jackknife, and for anything that goes wrong with machinery, you've got a basic set of tools for minor adjustments. We've covered a lot, so it's unlikely you'd remember all of this if you ever did take to a lifeboat. Fortunately, they've even thought of that, and there's a survival menu and a card telling you all different life-saving signals. As I say, the equipment is all standard issue no matter what sort of lifeboat you have. Whether it's a partially enclosed lifeboat from a cruise ship or a free-fall lifeboat from a chemical tanker, you will have the same gear. Hopefully you've enjoyed learning a little about lifeboat equipment today. Remember, we're over on Patreon if you would like to join our new community. I'm aiming to grow it into a place where we can all chat and learn about things about the maritime industry. Otherwise, we publish here on YouTube on the last Friday of every month. Until next time, thank you for watching, and goodbye.